Welcome back to another episode of Expat Profiles. Jesse Bayer, Abundant Living Ecuador. We are a real estate and development company, gotta say company, I guess, located here in the Vilcabamba, Loja area. Pleased to be joined today by Richie Lay. Richie's become a friend over the years. Richie bought some property down here 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 4 years ago. Has bought property in Cuenca as well prior to that. Interesting guy. I'm glad to be interviewing him today. So we're going to talk a little bit about his experiences in Ecuador, his experiences in Vilcabamba. He's done a shipping container. He's gotten the visa. He's done construction here as well. So he's knowledgeable on the area, can compare and contrast a little bit too between Cuenca and Vilcabamba. So Richie, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Richie, let's just start with letting people know a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and how did you wind up retired in Ecuador?
Well, my wife and I lived our whole life in Texas, and the last 30 years in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And at a certain point, we decided that we probably wanted to retire outside of the country. So we explored several areas, parts of Asia, Mexico, Costa Rica, and we finally hit here, and it checked all the boxes, as they say. So the weather, just everything. I think the weather was kind of tops on our list, and so that's what did it. And we knew as soon as we got here that this would be the place that would work best for us.
Interesting. And you, well, actually, let's stay on the background stuff for a few minutes. So you're kind of, you're an interesting guy to me. For me, you're somebody who I know has been very smart with their financial resources over the years, and has sort of, you sort of cracked the code as far as saving and investing and making good decisions on that sort of stuff. And then here you are in Ecuador. You made I think a really good decisions on the stuff you've done here as well. Good timing on a lot of that stuff as well. Do you want to talk, and it's fine if you don't, but do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the work career and retirement and coming down here?
Well, yeah, I worked in the airline business for 36, 37 years, and yes, we tried to do plan for the future.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, that helped us in our decision making. We wanted to go somewhere where that we were sure that we would get the best bang for our buck. And so again, really truly is mostly the weather that brought us here. And originally we came to Cuenca.
Right.
And we built a place in Cuenca, and we lived there for 6 months, and then we came down here to look at a house that I'd seen for several years online, and met you, and that's how we became involved down here. So we have the house here now, and we really prefer here in Vilcabamba, but it's just the difference between the big city and the country.
Sure.
Mainly.
So, okay, so you arrived in Cuenca, you said, well, I guess here was 4 years ago. Cuenca was before that. So that was...
Yeah, about 20. We took a little leave of absence from our jobs, and we came and lived in Cuenca for 6 months. And then we went back, and then all the COVID and all that happened. But we did live in Cuenca for 6 months straight, and really enjoyed it also.
Yeah.
I mean, it really just depends on what you're looking for.
Completely. I mean, I always say the same thing about, the Vilcabamba sort of Cuenca discussion, or even Loja Cuenca, which is another discussion. Okay, so you originally came to Cuenca, ultimately decided to, home base more out of Vilcabamba. Talk a little bit about the differences between the two. I mean, obviously, the climate is the obvious one. We can talk about that, but talk a little bit in general about some of those differences.
Yeah, definitely. It's the big difference, like you say, is the weather, and I prefer it cooler, and I really like Cuenca weather-wise. It's not a tremendous difference here, but I would say it's 10 or 15 degrees, or it feels like it difference most of the time. Usually a little more rain in Cuenca.
Sure.
But you also have the big city there where if you like that sort of thing, there's more restaurants, there's more activity, there's certainly more expats, and so they have a club for everything in Cuenca. Yeah. But and then here the weather, if you like it a little warmer, it's a little warmer here. The plant life here is fabulous from where we came from. We think this is unbelievable, and that's mainly it, I guess. It's just mainly country and big city.
Yeah. I mean, Cuenca's up at 8,300 feet. We're at 5,000 here, so definitely that's where that accounts for the temperature difference. Obviously, Cuenca gets a lot more rain, but yeah, the city is nice to have those resources and all that stuff at your disposal. Lojas, which is 45 minutes away here, much smaller city than Cuenca, less options, warmer than Cuenca still, cooler than here, warmer than Cuenca. It's interesting too, right? Everyone has their climate preferences.
Exactly.
For me, Cuenca's freezing. For you, this is probably too hot, right?
Well, the longer I'm here, I guess you acclimate.
You're acclimated. So we were just talking a little bit about the differences, in climate, and you were saying that you've acclimated a bit to the climate here.
Yes. Again, from coming from Cuenca to here, it's not a small difference. It's a medium difference, and but pretty quickly you learn what time of the day is best to plan your activities around and this and that. But and here you have the rainy season and the dry season. So during the rainier part of the year, like we're in now with the cloud cover, it's very I really enjoy it. Now in the dry season, much more sunshine, and sometimes we like to go to Cuenca.
Yeah, sure.
In the dry season.
That's interesting, because that's also the time when Cuenca's the coldest.
Yes.
In the June, July, August, and those types of months. Interesting. Yeah. No, Cuenca's a great city. Okay, so you bought something in Cuenca, spent some time there, ultimately settled on Vilcabamba, and then you made the full-time move now to live here some months back or a year back? Or?
Yes, we've been here in Ecuador full-time since last June.
Since last June.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're in April, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Almost May now, so just about a year, just under a year. Okay, cool. And you're now, I assume, a resident of Ecuador?
Well, right now we're on a temporary visa.
The temporary resident?
Temporary
or
residency, and so next year, just after the first of the year, we'll apply for our permanent residency.
Okay, so you're almost 2 years in.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, who did you use for that, if you don't mind sharing?
My wife did it.
She did it.
Yes,
Yeah.
She was able to navigate everything.
Yeah, you can do it on your own.
She did it while we were in the States, which...
you did it through the embassy?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a really good way to do it.
Yes.
I've suggested that to people a lot. People don't know you can apply through the embassies back home,
Right.
which in many ways can be easier because you're dealing with a little bit more of the U.S. culture there than the culture here, which can be a little bit more bureaucratic.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So you got the visa back home. Now, you guys, it doesn't matter. Yeah, okay, very good. And you've been in Vilca about 10 months. Talk to me a little bit about Vilcabamba, the good, the bad, the ugly. What do you think of it so far?
So far, we like it more as time passes. You become a little adjusted to the lifestyle, to the way things operate. Whether it's your getting your electric, dealing with paying your bills and all that. There's a little bit of a learning curve on all of that, but we've got it all automated now, so all of that's good. Again, as far as the possibilities for the gardening and that sort of stuff here, it's just fabulous. It's incredible how quickly things grow here. Yeah. It's just amazing. We like being here. We're pretty close to Vilcabamba. It's 15 minutes, and it's nice. You know, it's very quiet out here where we're at. It's very peaceful. So I guess that would be it. We like to have the option to go into Vilca and do our shopping, and then even still, like you said, you can go to Loja just about as easily, and there's even a better selection of products in
Sure.
Loja.
Yeah, and just to fill people in too, so we're out here in Hacienda San Joaquin. This is Richie's second floor deck here. There's actually a third floor deck, but it wasn't set up to film on. But you can see the views here are just spectacular. Behind me, I guess it would be kind of there on the camera. You get a lot of rain sort of up in the mountains that you can see. Rainbows, I would imagine, up there quite a bit. We're still in rainy season here, so rainy season is coming to an end, but everything's green and lush right now. It does brown out a bit the other time of year. But yeah, this is Hacienda San Joaquin, and this is sort of one of the last properties, you know, on the edge. So we're looking out over the valley behind us, and then this valley, as Richie said, is about 10-15 minutes from town, from Vilcabamba. Okay, cool. So talk to me a little bit. I mean, you guys, if I'm not mistaken, are not Spanish speakers, correct?
No. Of course, in my younger days, I took some Spanish in high school, and so I'm relying on that. And of course, you learn a little bit every day just by going about your business. So it's really not necessary to be fluent at all. What I found is that if you're making an attempt to communicate in Spanish, people are very willing to help you and be accommodating. And so that's what we do. And like I say, we just learn a little more every day from riding in the taxis or shopping in the stores. You pick up words here and there. And I know a lot of people think that you need to take courses and be fluent and all that, but really, if you just learn some vocabulary, just some common words, will go a long ways.
So, I mean, that kind of gets into the culture stuff a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about the Ecuadorian culture. What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it?
Well, I will say this, from all the places that we traveled and looked at and thought about moving to, when we hit Ecuador, it seemed like these were the most welcoming people of anywhere that we had traveled. And so that was, I said weather, but I think that the people might have been our number one choice.
So sorry, continue.
For the reason of moving to Ecuador. It certainly was way up there.
Interesting. So some of those places you mentioned that you had researched, you actually went there, traveled there, checked them out.
Yes.
And then decided on here. Oh, that's cool. Okay, yeah. So accommodating. Are there downsides to the culture that you would say, or?
Well, there's always the mañana deal where everything is going to happen tomorrow, and so you have to learn more patience than what we are used to in the U.S. Certainly, things will happen in their own time, and
right.
so you just have to be willing to do that. And so as long as you're what I tell people is that if you're happy where you are and you come here, there's every likelihood you'll be even happier. But if you're unhappy where you are, some people would be unhappy here.
Yeah. No, that's true. I've made the point over the years. I think there's some people who come here thinking it's going to solve all their problems,
right. Exactly.
And it's not the case. It might exacerbate them because you're now dealing with a new language, new culture, different norms, all that kind of stuff.
That's true. Yes.
What about safety? Do you feel safe in Ecuador? Did you feel safe in Cuenca? Do you feel safe in Vilcabamba, Loja? What are your thoughts on safety?
That's an excellent question because, again, in all of the places that we traveled, we felt the most safe here in Ecuador. Now, I will say this, there are, in Cuenca, absolutely safe. I would not hesitate to walk around after dark, generally anywhere in the city. Vilcabamba, I've not spent a lot of course, it's a very small town, and I don't have much experience there, but no, the crime rate here, and you can, the stats pointed out that it's actually very low, and the majority of any kind of crime is just property crimes,
Right.
not physical stuff. So that's important, and that's good. But yeah, it's just common sense.
Yeah.
Don't leave stuff laying around. Just be aware of your surroundings.
Sure. And obviously, I would describe you as a pretty normal guy from the States, right? You're not way out on any curve, I would say, in any direction, right? You're pretty normal guy that you'd meet in the U.S. What's that like living here, right? I mean, can you buy the things you need to buy? Can you get the food you want to eat? Can you do you have the friends you want to have? Like, what is it like, sort of coming from the States as, I mean, everyone, as a fairly typical, American in some way, right? And then now you're living in rural Ecuador, in Ecuador, with the culture, with all the differences, with the different food, with the shopping differences,
Right.
what's that like for you?
Well, I enjoy cooking, and so you're not able to find everything. The selection isn't like it would be in a well-populated part of the U.S. So you do have to make accommodations, but I found that you can generally search most things out if it's very important to you. And then as far as other products, I don't know. It's ultimately it's kind of what do you need, to make you happy. I think part of what can make you happy is realizing that it's not all about things so much, and I think that's kind of the sense you get here in Ecuador. It's more about family, and it's more about people rather than things.
Yeah.
So, but we really haven't had anything that we couldn't find, and it's the people here are really ingenious about how they can make do with what we need. I mean, the things that we've needed here, they've been able to create that I wouldn't have thought were possible.
Yeah.
And anyway.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, and that, you're right. I mean, you hit on two things that, are interesting to me there too, right? It's sort of the cultural stuff of moving away from stuff and more into human to human interaction, and then the cost of labor is so low, combined with amazing craftsmanship, that people can build anything.
Right. Exactly.
For
That's
a really
what
good price. Yeah.
Yes.
It's pretty, which is fun. You did a shipping container, right?
I did.
What was that process like?
It's pretty difficult, actually. So it's very, you've got to be very detailed. It's very rigorous. You have to. There's lots of records that have to be kept, have to be turned over to the government once you get here with your container, and you certainly need help to do that. But it's, I could make an argument either way that it's better to make do with what you can get here. But there's some things that are nice. If you can't live without it, that's the only way to get it here. But I would say I could make an argument for or against.
Did you hire a shipping agent, or did you also try to do that on your own?
No, we hired someone, and
Okay.
it's just it's really more difficult than it should be, and they're very picky. Just for example, I had a toaster that we shipped, and it got here, and they wouldn't let it in because they considered it an oven, and so we had to go through several days of paperwork and all of this, and I had to pay a fine and all of that in order to get this toaster in, a $40 toaster, and it wound up costing me like $400. So it's just interesting. So that part of it's aggravating, but it's, if there's something you can't live without or whatever, it's kind of the only game to get it here.
I mean, some of those calculations have changed too, because when you were, I don't know how long ago you did the container, but within the last couple of years, prices were on imported things were a lot higher than they are now. A lot of those taxes have been gotten rid of. I mean, if you go back to, when I was advising people in 14 and 15 and 16 in those years, I mean, those years, you'd walk into a store to buy a pair of sneakers, and they were 2.5 times, what you would have paid for them in the States. So, extrapolate that out to a household worth of, appliances and things like that. It made a lot more financial sense. Now they've gotten rid of so many import taxes. For example, electronics basically don't have import taxes now. Even things like sneakers, sporting goods, things like that, they're a little more expensive than back home, but probably 10 to 20% more, as opposed to 80 to 200% more.
Right.
So some of those calculations have changed a little bit too over the years. Okay, let's talk a little bit about labor and construction. Let's start with labor. I saw somebody cleaning here that obviously you've hired. I don't know if you have other groundskeepers and things like that, but what's it like, looking for labor, finding labor, that sort of thing?
The labor market is plentiful here, and it's quite easy to find whatever help that you're looking for. If you need construction, there's plenty of people around that offer that. As far as housekeeping, we've been very pleased. We've never had that before until we came here, so it's quite a change in our lifestyle, and we really enjoy that part. And our property here is pretty large, and so we have help on the outside also, which is nice. But everything just stays nice all the time, and it's really quite inexpensive to have that happen.
Yeah. So you mentioned construction. I don't know if you've done a lot of repairs, you've done a lot of remodeling and stuff like that. You mentioned you're about to maybe build some other things. What has that been like? The process, the timelines, the quality of the work, that sort of thing.
I was actually surprised at the quality of the work. Was better than I expected, and of course, I'm sure anywhere you go, there's going to be a better people than in some areas than in others. But we've been very pleased with the people that we've hired to do this stuff. It's, I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a decent experience so far.
Yeah, we've been very happy. The only thing that I would note is it's probably going to take longer than you would hope. But
Sure.
Other than that, everything is done to a high standard and good quality.
Yeah. At least with the people you've hired, you've probably made good choices.
Right. Well, you do have to check and just due diligence like anywhere.
Yeah.
You want to say who have you worked for before and check.
Would you say that's been a key to your success here? I mean, as I look at you, my own analysis, right or wrong, it seems like you take a very measured approach to everything you do. And would you say that sort of due diligence and checking out all these countries, for example, before you came, and then checking on builders and references before you hire and all that sort of stuff, would you credit that as sort of a key to success here? Or
Yes, it's just like you always hear when you come here, you better rent before you buy, this and that. But if you do the homework and check it out and make sure that living outside of the country would work for you, and then I don't think you have to be you don't want to do anything quickly, but if you think things through and not just do things on the fly, yes, you can be very successful here.
Yeah. Have you spent much time? I mean, I'm sure you do some shopping there, but have you spent any time in Loja? What do you think of the city?
I haven't spent a lot of time in Loja, but I do go in about once a week for the big supplies that we do. As far as Vilcabamba, I just go in there to get little sundries, anything I need quickly. But I go in once a week, usually to Loja. The stores are bigger, and it's just easier to get everything in one or two places. And so, yeah, I like Loja, but I'm just not that familiar with it.
Yeah. You're you know, I know you're a sort of a savvy guy from an investment standpoint. What are do you have thoughts on Ecuador in general, or this area in general, as a, you know, as far as investment potential? Obviously, you know, you've put some resources into your life here. I think, again, from knowing you a little bit, I think, you know, you make decisions calculating that stuff as part of the equation. What are your thoughts around some of that?
Well, when we first started looking here was 12 years ago in Ecuador, and at that time prices were certainly lower, but there wasn't much excitement. And
Yep.
here now, especially in the last year, we see in Vilcabamba they're building everywhere, and even here in the hacienda there were several properties for sale, and now we're down to just a couple. So there's a lot more interest because in my opinion, people, especially like in the U.S., are realizing it's easier to live in a place like Ecuador on limited resources. You know, here we don't have the same inflation as the U.S. So it's certainly easier, and you can live. I think a person on just their Social Security, or if you have Social Security and a pension, even a small pension, goes a long ways here as compared to the U.S. So
Yeah.
much easier life, and like you say, you can have help here, where certainly in other places you wouldn't be able to hire help to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice, isn't it, that sort of the difference in lifestyle that you can afford here based on some of those differences in costs is significant.
Exactly, especially, and it's you hear numbers all over the board on what
Sure.
it costs to live in Ecuador, and I just tell people it's you know, if you want to live like a local and eat all your food out of the garden and this and that, you can live very inexpensively. But and it's nice to the funniest thing you'll notice here is the first time you go to a market. And when I first came to Cuenca, I ran into an American, and he had asked me if I had been to the market, and I said no, and he said, well, when you go, you'll realize you can't carry out $20 worth of food. And the first time I went, I was laughing, because it's true, and it's still the case. If you're just buying fruits and vegetables, that
Yep.
will buy you a lot of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's interesting, that dynamic, right? So if you go to the market, you're shopping for, let's say, a head of lettuce. You know, you're spending 20 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents, 50 cents, maybe if it's massive or something. You know, you're spending whatever, or maybe you're getting 3 for 50 cents. You know, whatever you're
Right.
spending. That same head of lettuce at Super Maxi is $1 or 76 cents or $1.25, or it's maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times more expensive at the supermarket than it is at the market from the local producer, which is such an interesting dynamic. And it's a lot of things are like that, right? It's like if you go to a high end, which wouldn't be high end for the States, it would be like middle of the road for the States. Here it's high end. You go to a high end, furniture store, you're spending U.S. prices on what's considered here high end furniture. You have that same item custom made for you, maybe even nicer. You're
Right.
spending a fraction of that. It's really an interesting.
Yes, that's very true. We've had several items built here for us, just for a particular space, and you're exactly right. It's easier and less expensive to have it custom made, and there's a lot of very good woodworkers here in Vilcabamba and Cuenca. Cuenca's even known for their furniture.
Yeah. You also, let's see, the cost of oh right, yeah, you were talking about what it costs to live in Ecuador, and you're right. There's numbers all over, and it depends on lifestyle. It depends where you are too. I mean, if you're in Quito or Guayaquil, those are international cities with close to international city prices on things. Even I spent some time in Manta recently, and I got a good sense of the cost of living there. It's not expensive there by any means, but it's more expensive than Loja for sure.
Right.
Not even really that close. But I've always used the rule, and tell me what you think of this. The rule of maybe 4 or 5 to 1 as far as cost, or as far as how far that value, that dollar goes, right? So if you have $20,000 in income here, I think that's basically the equivalent of maybe $80,000 to $100,000 of income back home. Something like that, I think, is a fairly safe rule of thumb. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. And again, you're exactly right. I mean, it depends on do you choose to eat all of your meals at a restaurant, or do you so
Right.
Everybody, and then really the biggest difference here is if you require things that are imported from the U.S., even food-wise, if you want peanut butter from the U.S., it's much more expensive.
That's right. That's
and
right.
you can and some of those products you're amazed at how much they are here, but it's you're probably right. 3 to 4 times cheaper here.
Yeah.
For just general items. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing you identified too, right? You go to the supermarket and you buy, let's use peanut butter, right? You buy a U.S. brand of peanut butter, you're maybe paying double or something what you're...
Oh yeah, for a regular jar of peanut butter might be $8 or $9
right.
at Supermaxi.
Yeah.
And but it's because it's imported.
It's imported, yeah, and on those items it still has the taxes. Then you could buy, a ball
yeah.
of peanut butter from I'm gonna forget the name of the area. It'll come to me in a minute. But from a few hours away, and that's maybe 50 cents, or $1 or something. And that's another like dichotomy in this sort of two markets. It's sort of the upper class supermarket. Everything's clean and orderly and looks like the U.S. basically, versus the other Ecuador, which is just most people doing their thing, shopping where they shop,
right.
Small stores, markets, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Well, we covered, probably most of what I wanted to talk about. Is there anything that I left out or that you want to share that comes to mind?
Oh, it's just, I guess mainly that's it. I don't know that that leaving whatever your home country, wherever you grew up, and moving to be an expat is for everyone. It's clearly not for everyone, but again, if you're able to adapt a little bit and have patience and work through some stuff, it really is nice. We've noticed. Well, I'll tell you a big difference when we first came to Cuenca, even to visit. We went to eat at a restaurant, and it took us an hour and a half to eat because they brought things out so slowly and all of that, and we thought, oh, this is horrible. In the U.S., you're in and out in 30 minutes, and we stayed for a month on our first trip, and the last day we were there, we made the comment, oh, isn't this wonderful how you can sit here and enjoy a leisurely meal. And so when we go back to the U.S., we feel
rushed.
the rushed and the pressure, and also as long as you're able to adapt, it really is a nice experience.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I mean, anytime anyone said to me, what's the best advice you give for somebody coming to Ecuador, it's adapt. It's I used to say roll with the punches. Drop the expectations. Don't have all that stuff going on. This is supposed to be that way. This is supposed to be that way. People here are really nice. They're very accommodating. They want to help you, and everything's different.
Yes.
So you got to just roll with it. It's
right.
You'll learn. It'll take a little time.
Yeah.
There'll be some bumps in the road. Obviously, especially if you don't speak the language, you're not familiar with Latin American culture. It's different. But the pluses of that, like you mentioned, of time is not money here.
Right.
Relationships are very human. You can expect help from anyone you ask.
Right.
Nobody's gonna sort of brush you off and you know, I don't have the time. Like that's
oh, exactly. And that a point I would like to make on that. Quite often we would have a project going and expect a guy or a crew to be there on a certain day, and they're not there. And then they would show up a day or two later, and I would say, why didn't y'all come on Tuesday? And they said, oh, the kids had a soccer game. And I'm like, okay, so everybody took off, or there was something at the school. And so they're much more family oriented than what we came to. And you're exactly right. What's drilled into our heads are that time is money, and it does not apply here at all.
Yeah, which for me, like as I've been here about 9 years, as I adjusted, and there was an adjustment period, for me, but as I adjusted, I like it better. I prefer that. I prefer that it's like, not everyone is gonna, be at my pace necessarily, but I can count on anyone for anything.
Exactly.
I'll take that trade-off, know. Exactly. And what I've noticed too over the years, and you'll discover this probably if you haven't already, Richie, and maybe you have, is that once you find the people that you work with well, there's a whole class of people in Ecuador. It's not a tiny number, but there's some percentage. It's certainly not the majority, but there's that 10 or 20% of professionals in whatever walk of life who really do value being on time, following through, doing what they say. It's not culturally as normal, so there's less of them. But once you find them, you really do. Like I have a network of people who, boom, it's done, it's there. It took me a long time to build that network, but but certainly you can find that as well.
Oh yeah, and I don't want to put that out as a criticism. I'm just saying it's a cultural thing, and so again, once you recognize it and you're able to roll with it, as the situations come up, the people are much more friendly. You see very, very little, I would say, of someone. You don't see many people upset in Ecuador.
It's true.
In the U.S., you're going to see people upset quite often, but you come here and if someone is upset, it's an oddity, and it's really a deal. And the funny thing is, most of the times that I've ever seen anyone upset, it's an expat. It's not an Ecuadorian. They're very happy with life, and so it's and I think that's my favorite part of living here, is that it's so peaceful and calm all of the time. No matter where you go, people, like you said, are very willing to help you if there's anything. It really is, for my wife and I, we consider it a much better life.
Now that's a great point. I remember being maybe a year or two in, and I'm in this little pizza shop in Loja at night, and someone walks in off the street, pissed off, right, and of an Ecuadorian, and sort of verbally rah 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 to the pizza shop owner, and I was so struck by it because I hadn't seen anything like that in the year or two that I had been in Ecuador, because people just don't raise their voices here. They don't get upset. They don't get into verbal altercations, and in the culture I came from in New York in the Northeast, you see that 100 times a day. I mean, it's allowed. You can yell at anyone, basically. It's okay, essentially. And that really is a difference. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about, with the adaptability. People here have that trait. People here, it is what it is. People don't get very upset because they wanted it this way and it's that way. I remember talking to a builder who was telling me about anytime I've referred foreign clients to builders, I've warned them. I've been like, look, the expectations are going to be very different. Here's how you have, right? I remember talking to a builder who's telling me, look, when I build for a Lojano, for someone in Loja, I build the house and I hand them the keys. When I build for an expat, they want to pick the tile, they want to pick the color, they want to tell me where this goes, where that goes. They had never experienced that before, right? And we think that's, well, of course I want to pick all that stuff. But the mentality here is like, it is what it is, and there, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely different, but again, I would definitely say it's better. Being 1 year in, actually a year and a half, that counting Cuenca, but we kind of reevaluate every couple of months, and we ask each other, is this going the way we had planned, and is it what we had hoped? And so far, a year and a half in, it's better than we had hoped. So hopefully, I don't see any indication of anything to change that. So again, the longer you're here, it just becomes a little bit easier navigating the bureaucracy. The things that are negatives would be the bureaucracy and the some of that stuff, but it gets easier to navigate them, and it's just again, especially here in Vilcabamba, everything's so calm and peaceful. Anywhere you go, you can go sit on the square all day if you want to, and just watch the kids run around. So there, you know, it's a far different lifestyle than we had in the U.S.
Sure. Well, Richie, I always want to give people a chance to plug anything they want to plug. I don't think you have anything to plug, but is there anything you want you want to put out there?
No, not really. Nothing comes to mind.
Very good. Richie, thank you so much for the time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, this has been another episode of Expat Profiles. There we go. I found the words. Jesse Bayer, Abundant Living Ecuador, real estate and development company in the Southern Andes of Ecuador. Have a great day. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe. We'd love to see you hit the bell as well. Get the notifications. We put out a lot of content all the time. And have a great day.